I've argued this throughout the country. People have attacked me on Twitter, and I'm not on Instagram. Thank God. I have an Instagram.
Yeah.
Somebody got a hold of my Instagram. I don't go on Instagram. I have a Facebook only because of the network. I am a Twitter guy. Whenever I do write something, it's Twitter, and that's it. I've spoken about Steph Curry. I think Steph Curry is a fantastic player. He's a great player, one of the great players of our era. I think Steph Curry is very overrated. And the reason why I think he's very overrated, it's not because he's not the greatest shooter we've ever seen, because he is. But I think his all-around game, you can't compare him to the Isaiah Thomases of the world or the Magic Johnsons of the world or even the John Stocktons of the world, because they were a different type of breed of point guard. I think the game has transitioned into these shooting guards that turn into point guards because they want these guys to shoot threes and chuck threes. Do you like the way the game has transitioned into, or you just think it's just a little overboard offensively?
What I don't like, and as someone who has coached youth basketball and still run basketball camps here, and I've always said I'm not coaching super high level kids, but I want my players at the end of the year to get better. And I would preach to them in practice, and I did this with any rec league or whatever you playing. If you can get a layup, take the 2 points. Mm-hmm. These guys now run to the 3-point line, and it spills over to kids' games. And it's funny, like I remember playing pickup basketball with my friends, and it was at a school that had a church gym, and so they let us play at noon, and the kids would get half the court. They no longer care if you can dunk. They want everybody to shoot threes. They're like, hey, shoot a three. Like before, they're like, you'd always get asked, could you dunk? And I'm like, yeah, if you lower the rim 2 feet or you give me a donut and a cup of coffee, I can dunk. Absolutely. I'm fantastic at that. They'll tell you I'm legendary at the local Dunkin'. But yeah, I don't mind it, but I don't like the way it gets manipulated. What I didn't like was a lot of the foul calling, the drop the ball below your waist. So when a guy reaches, you rip up through. So we're shooting free throws all the time. And I don't like the notion that a 15-foot jumper by analytics is a bad shot. If you can't make a 15-foot jumper and you're in the NBA, you need to go get that job at the bank your mama wanted to get you when you were born. You don't belong in the league. When you were born, your mom didn't go, hey, he's going to play in the NBA. She goes, boy, I hope he's a banker or a lawyer or a doctor. If you can't make a 15-foot jumper, that's what you need to go do. And if you don't get up for competition, I say that same thing. But I think Steph Curry is sensational in this. The reason I would disagree a little bit, I see what you're saying. He doesn't have to run the offenses like Stockton did with the pick and roll with Malone, or the way Magic opened that free-flowing game and changed basketball forever with that, by the way. But Steph did as well, and I've seen him be incredibly unselfish, which I like. But his dribble routine before every game is pretty legendary, and his ball handling skills, I think, go unappreciated because of his shooting ability. Now, I still think Kyrie Irving has the best handle in the NBA. Ja Morant is coming close, but Steph Curry's right there with him. These guys could go through freeway traffic and not lose the ball, and it's crazy. And I just think that Steph is relied upon to do so much more than that because of the system than be a pure point guard. And you're right, the days of the pure point guard are over. We have one in Memphis that we expect Ja Morant this year, if healthy, to go 27 and 8 instead of 20 and 12. The days of a point guard getting 1,000 assists are over because they score too much. They're relied upon to score too much because they tend to be the best athletes. Now, where that starts is those grassroots basketball things. The best players on those teams have the ball in their hands, and it doesn't matter if they're 14 years old and 6'1" or they're 5'7". If they can handle, they can handle, and the coaches don't care anymore. It's that positionless basketball. I think the shame of it is there's still centers that are talented enough to take over games, to get on the low block and be unstoppable. But now your centers are stepping out to the 3-point line. But if you think about it this way, go look at Bill Russell's vital signs, his stats. He was 6'10", 220. That's a 3. That's not a guy that's going to grab 37 rebounds, and the game changed. But he was awesome. And I remember one of the highlights of my career was getting to host a symposium for a select few season ticket holders here, and Bill Russell was speaking. He had written a book. And I'd always heard this guy was a little cantankerous with the media, so I was probably as nervous as you could be. And I was a kid, like maybe 33 years old, and I was like, Mr. Russell, my father was a great fan of yours. And I was just shaking, and he just puts this massive hand on my back. He goes, kid, relax. I'm just a guy that played basketball. And I was like, yeah, but you were pretty good. And we kind of talked, and he was really, really nice. And the question came up, and I'll never forget this. They said, you never averaged 20 points a game in your career, and he never shot above 50%. Someone said, why were you not more of an offensive factor? He said, because Coach Auerbach never wanted me to play on the offensive end. He said, you rebound, you defend. We'll take care of the rest with Havlicek and Kuzi and these other guys that can score, Sam Jones and whoever those Celtic legends were that were around him. He said, if I wanted to score 25 a night, I could have, but I was a team player. And that's what made me respect that so much more. So I think if you put Steph Curry in a situation where you said, hey, we want you to shoot the occasional three, but our offense is predicated on running and getting the ball into this, I think he would have been terrific in that role. He just happened to figure out he's the best shooter in the game.
Yeah, well, what really pissed me off about Steph Curry is when they won the championship, that game, even when the game was over, he was chucking up threes the last 2 minutes of the game. Yeah. They kept him on. I think Steph Curry, he wants to break every single scoring record. He wants to be the best legendary shooter of our era of all time, and I think he's got more to prove with that. It's really just a show-off game when you watch the Golden State Warriors, with Draymond Green's big mouth, with Klay Thompson after games attacking people, and then Steph Curry doing his stupid shimmy every time he hits a three-point shot. These guys, they're fantastic. They're some of the great threesomes we've ever seen in the game of basketball. Right. But you never saw Michael Jordan doing a shimmy, even though Dennis Rodman was the crazy person. You never see Dennis Rodman after the game talk about how stupid the other guy is. And if you ever saw him off the court, you'd punch him in the face. Dennis Rodman was crazy. You never heard him say that. And Scottie Pippen was a quiet guy that really barely ever said anything.
It changed. I think it was Gary Payton that really kind of brought that evolution of the trash talk into the game. And I'm with you because I always said you do it that way. The worst you ever heard Michael Jordan say was, Bill Laimbeer, he is not going up to block my shot. He's going up to foul me because he ain't going to block my shot. Well, like, yeah, that's true. We see the point. But I will tell you this, back in the day, I do have a friend named Dwight Boyd who played for the University of Memphis. He had a cup of coffee in the NBA with San Antonio. And in a preseason game with the Spurs, he had to guard Larry Bird. And Larry Bird walks right up to him and notoriously was a tremendous trash talker.
I know. Yep.
And Larry Bird just bowed down so no one else heard him. And he goes, rookie, I don't have a blanking clue why they put you on me to guard me, but you're in for a long blanking night. And Dwight to this day still laughs about it. And I go, and what do you do? He goes, lit me up for 30 in about 27 minutes. And I said, and what happened? He goes, every time he made a shot, he goes, told you. Every time he made a shot, he goes, told you. I told you it's going to be a long night. And so I get it. But the social media thing, that's where it goes too far sometimes. I mean, I can't say anything about it because I love our guys and our guys talk. And we've gotten a little reputation in Memphis with guys that do it. There was an incident with LeBron this year with our team where Desmond Bane and LeBron kind of bumped shoulders. That's two big dudes. Desmond Bane is built like a middle linebacker, strong safety that's going to annihilate a tight end coming over the middle. But he's a great shooter, and they talk to each other a lot more than the other team from what I see. Now, in the end of the game, Ja Morant has said to somebody, if you don't know who I am, you better call somebody, and like did the phone thing. I think when he blocked Kyrie Irving's shot on a game winner against the Nets. But I think our guys get labeled as those young, brash punks, and so other teams start talking. When I've seen our team, a lot of times we're talking to each other. They're talking to each other and talking about like firing themselves up, and I get it, but I'm with you. I like, show me with your play, don't show me with your mouth. Like making a three when you're up 17 and acting like you just won the NBA title, that grates on me a little bit too. But overall, I think the game's in a very good place. I think it's as skilled as it's been. I think the message became clear that the European players were coming over with better skill sets, better polished games on multi-facets, whereas the NBA game was, we're just going to give it to one guy and play ISO ball, and everybody else has to stand around. And so now you've got guys that contribute. Look, Ja Morant was good in the Timberwolves series, there's no doubt. The Memphis Grizzlies don't advance to the second round without Brandon Clark. A lot of your listeners may not even know who Brandon Clark is unless they're hardcore NBA fans. Solid player, 11, 12 points a game, 6, 7 rebounds, but he was sensational on the offensive glass. And that's where I think the game's gotten better. The depth of teams now has finally caught up to after expansion and going to 30 teams. And now they're talking about doing it again. I'm like, you could set this back and have guys out there that just should be either at the end of the bench or playing somewhere else. And that's just the nature of the NBA. There's a very fine line. And so I love it, but I do think at times this whole check me out, get me on Instagram, how many likes am I going to get if
TikTok
I talk trash to this guy? God. Yeah, the TikTok thing is, oh my gosh.
Tell Draymond Green stop sending his private things to his Snapchat too. That guy is out of his mind, man.
I'm going to leave that one to you because I think Draymond Green, if I said a word to him, might just punch me. I have no desire whatsoever to get hit by a 6'7", 235-pound athlete. Maybe that's how some people find a good time on a Friday night, but I've got other options.
I'm 5'10". Congregate the city of Memphis against Draymond Green.
I'm 5'10" and 230 pounds, so.
You want him to go Tanner Boyle on the city of Memphis and fight the entire city?
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty tough here, man.
I know. Exactly why I'm saying that.
The city of Memphis, you're not making it.
I know. That's exactly why I say that. NBA fans across the country would love to see Draymond Green get taken out by a city.
Yeah. Well, Matt Barnes, the funny thing is Matt was legendary for running his mouth. And at one point with the Clippers, when there was that rivalry between the two teams, kicked a trash can, and then the Grizzlies acquired him. And Matt Barnes went from super villain to super loved because he was tough, like Zach Randolph and Tony Allen. And in his press conference, he goes, I just want to add one more thing. I want to apologize to the trash can that I injured years ago here in this building. And we all fell in love with him because of it.
Well, I love Zebo. I'll never forget Zach Randolph. I have a lot of respect
Awesome
for
guy.
him. Yes, very nice guy. He retired. I met him recently. I think he went to the Grizzlies Hall of Fame.
He was the first number we retired. Instead of putting a jersey up because of the music ties, they put a platinum record up with his number up on the wall. And
that's cool.
Those four guys, Tony Allen, Mike Conley, Marc Gasol, those three will be up there with Zach, and there'll probably be a statue. Tony was going to go next, and then obviously some things happened. They're going to get that back in order. Mark's now retired, so Mark will be the third, and then Mike once he retires. Those four guys changed this franchise for the better, and now I love the fact that our young guys respect that, and when they see those guys at a game, they go pay respects to them for making Memphis not a doormat, a respectable NBA franchise. And still to this day, this is why I don't love that social media world. You get people, you work for a poverty franchise and you're trash. I'm like, dude, we got the second best record in the league. What are you talking about? Like, bong hits are great in the evening or in the morning, but 17 of them before breakfast to make you this much of an idiot is probably not the best way to go through life, my friend.
We are talking to Grizzlies Radio play-by-play broadcaster Eric Hasseltine. Do you have any good stories about Lorenzen Wright?
Oh, man.
Do you
just
know
gave
any,
me goosebumps.
Yeah. You have any stories that you know about Lorenzen Wright?
Yeah, I've been here since the team moved here. So Ren was one of our best players in the early going. It really was a tragedy. Every time I see the story, it hurts me. He and I would do interviews. My favorite memory with Ren, one of the best stories I could have, this type of man he was. I ran into him at a local gym here, and I hadn't seen him. He had since gone on, played in Sacramento, played in Cleveland, and I feel this giant hand on my back, and I'm just in the gym, and it's Lorenzen Wright. And the next thing I know, this 7-foot guy is giving me a hug like we're long-lost brothers, and we had become friends, and just sharing stories about that. There's no one memory, except for the time that I finally asked him, I said, Ren, do you ever wear an outfit twice? And he goes, well, no. And I said, Lorenzen, these are not cheap pieces of clothes. He goes, I know. I go, what do you do with them? He goes, well, I give them to my friends, or I donate them to needy kids that are tall, because there's a lot of tall young basketball players that probably aren't going to get to the NBA. I said, well, that's good. And he said, yeah, I just try to do that. I said, well, all right, that's wonderful, and that makes you an even better person. He goes, yeah, now then my friends that are on the payroll, those mooches, they can go get their own stuff, though. And so I just laugh about it. He was a wonderful man. It's a tragic story. Yeah. It's heartbreaking for the kids. I've worked with Elliot Perry for 13 years, and Elliot's as good a guy as there is. Lorenzen was like his little brother. You mentioned that name to him, and those are one of the few times I ever see Elliot Perry really, truly get choked up. Lorenzen was a favorite son of the city. I have a ton of respect for him. He had a restaurant here. They weren't the best with their money, but not every NBA player is. I'm not going to hold that against him. He loved his kids. He was great for the city. He was as genuine a guy that I had met early in my career. I felt like I could ask him honest questions as a broadcaster. And when you're in your early 30s and trying to make your way, that's invaluable. And so we struck up a friendship, and just little things that you laugh about, that like, hey, I was at this party and my buddy had a girl pop out of the cake. My wife didn't think it was so funny when she was there. I was like, why would you bring your wife to that party, dude? He goes, because she wasn't letting me go alone. And I said, all right, well, I get it. Just things like that, those stories. He was a great dude. His family had tragedy. His father, running a basketball center, got shot by a disgruntled player and ended up in a wheelchair. Mr. Lou is what we call him, Lou Wright. And Coach Lou was a great guy too, so it's tough. But there's a lot. That was a hard day for everybody when we found out. There was a lot of people around here that believed that eventually the truth would come out, and hopefully it did. And so we now can kind of rest our heads a little easier, and we miss our friend and we miss our teammate. The guys that played with him miss their teammates and their brother, and Memphis misses one of their favorite sons for sure.
I followed the story, and the tragedy, it's disgusting what happened, and the people that were involved, including his wife, deserve to be where they are right now.
Yeah.
So it's just disgusting.
Yeah, I agree with you.
We really appreciate you joining us. You're a friend of the show. We respect you more than anybody, and one of the more familiar play-by-play guys we've interviewed, and we've interviewed a ton of them. You really stand out as one of the best, so we really appreciate you.
I appreciate it. Hit me up around when we get through training camp.
Absolutely.
I'll give you a little preview of what we look like. I'd love to talk about the upcoming season, and I love being on your guys' show. You guys are always keeping it real, and we can talk about other things too. We can talk about football out here.
Well, we're not talking about my underwear.
There's not a real passion for college football in the South. Nobody down here takes it seriously, let me tell you. It's been a great time to be with you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Eric. We really appreciate
All right, fellas.